to have an understanding of how to share the understandings from one to the other over which we are working upon. When we say that we see language as a powerful tool for learning, we say that because we shape how to think through language and understand what is happening around us through literatures. Basically, literature communicates things to the students and learners, and hence it connects the learner to the word. When students or researches from languages and literature are done by educational pedagogues, we take support from the learnings around us, and to do that, the languages and literatures plays a vital role. When we actually connect these thinking together with communication and with the word, we develops the cognitive and socio-emotional development among the learners. That means together with doing research, we are also inculcating the idea of understanding the society and developing the emotions through the social conditions, situations, celebrations among them. When we do that, the learner engages himself or herself to the learnings of the various disciplines. Like we have students with us, those who have just passed class 12, and they have entered our department and have taken history, political science, geography, and uh, sociology. They all sit together with me in my paper called Teacher and Society. When I discuss with them about the roles of teachers in society, I find that students from sociology sees the teacher and the role of teacher in a different way. A student from political science subject visualizes the role of teacher in a different way. And the history teachers gives examples from the subjects of history that actually talks about the importance of teacher into the education system. This can only happen when the students are able to read and write the literature they have come across. For that matter, there is a need to do research with languages and literature using the educational envisioning towards the changes that are occurring. We as education pedagogue consider that students are not taught. Why? Because we consider that students come with a knowledge base to us. They have their own understanding. What a teacher does in classroom is he or she uses language to create an environment over which he or she creates his own understanding over an idea. This construction of knowledge is basically learning, and this learning facilitates the thought making and thought sharing. When I say they create thought, I also mean that they start thinking about their thinking, and that is metacognition. The moment we study, we do research with students to how they study and think, we get to know that there is a lot more effect of languages and literature they come across. This actually helps them to articulate, to think, to refine, and to improve their thinking. That means languages and literature plays a very important role of designing mind, over which the educational pedagogues are doing research. How we can and how we have and how languages and literature design the minds. When we say the languages and literature design minds, we add to it that it gives a capability to learner of doing critical thinking. Critical thinking in languages allow students to analyze, synthesize, and evaluate the informations around them effectively. This is very important for the educational pedagogues to understand that the language and the multimodal literacies that are around the learner affects their critical thinking in a very different way. How studies related with critical thinking and languages and literature can be done is an area where we all have to think on. There are many strategies that we perform in classrooms to enhance the critical thinking. And as teachers from English, you all must be doing these. Like debates, we ask them to write essays, we discuss ideas in class, we encourage them to speak on the issues and think logically and argue in the classrooms. Uh, we have tutorials very specifically designed in our timetable, and each teacher is allotted 2 to 3 uh, students. And we have on Wednesday 2 hour session wherein we discuss, we ask students to counter each other and argue over the idea they are sharing. When they do that, we see that in initial stages they are either hesitating to speak or they do not know about the concepts, but slowly and gradually they start reading. They start reading readings that we provide them. When they come after having read the readings, they have a different view of sharing and have grounds over arguing a statement. This pedagogy that we use is solely dependent upon the language and the literature that we provide to them. Maybe it is a digital literary content to that is shared to them, or any chapter that we find interesting or appealing that is to be read by them. But the point is that sharing gets enhanced with having content from the literatures provided to them. As I discussed that students hailing from different subject backgrounds, they have a different interpretation of the data that we provide them. They have their orientations and different ways of visualizing the things. When I ask students to, see the condition of Delhi pollution, a student wrote a poem over it. A mathematical student came up with a chart that shows the percentage of air pollution, water pollution, and the other pollution in Delhi. Students coming from economics shared the various products that actually adds to the pollution, and the history students came up with the changes that have occurred in last 10 years in the pollution of the Delhi. When I say language is a cross curricular connector, I actually want to uh, share with you that even if we give a condition to students in a classroom, students are going to think in their own way, and thinking gets affected by the language with which they are coming and the literatures that they read. Generally, we follow a bilingual classrooms because there is a limitation to us that we are primarily conversed with two language. Some of us are also knowing third language too, which is one or the other native language. That actually gives the learner and the teacher a flexibility of sharing the cognitive skills of culture to the students. We'll talk about the cultural skills also and the flexibility that we have. We accept the diversity in our classrooms, and we see that students coming from different backgrounds have a different way of expressing, and they have a different cultural awareness, and they are very good at sharing this when they use their own native language. We have done an experimentation in our classrooms that we have students, those who are strictly or can only speak either Hindi or English, and there are few those who can speak both. We have made groups of the bilingual students with the single language student together, wherein they help the English students understand Hindi and Hindi students understand English. We can understand that this is helping students to understand the classroom and understand the culture around them. My idea behind sharing this is the language is helping them to do that. When we share the learnings from one language and share that into other, that actually empathizes one learner into the other's feeling. When we read a literature, we find students sharing different human experiences, and when they read, they understand the things that are happening, and they can keep themselves into those situations and can understand and develop emotions accordingly. Languages and researchers that we do in education, we basically try to see the various inculcations of morals, societal issues idea, and see how the narratives available in the society issues affects them.
You have written every sheet, right? Every script you have written. So if any one of you wants to see that, please ask them to come here. Okay.
The researches that we propose in education related with language and pedagogy, we see that how language encourages the creative thinking together with the critical thinking. In those researches, we allow students to analyze themes, study symbolism, and develops their analysis skills. We have a paper on reading and reflecting on texts that actually helps students to read between the lines and share what do they get. Primarily, we start with the policies, the educational ideas, and later we shift to the social issues and the writings from the different writers. Particularly students coming from languages, we ask projects that talks about analysis of writings of the writers or authors, and I ask them to identify stories that actually helps them to imagine, and we ask them that what different they have received from this. Although the textbooks that are available in languages in school education that we analyze are well analyzed and well put up, keeping the learning outcomes and values to be inculcated into the students. So we ask students to also see that which are the other adding values that are also being uh, transferred by this story or the poem to the student. Students having history and language as two subjects, we allow them to do writings that reflects the social and historical findings and learnings that actually let student create an insight over the changes in the society in different times. I found students, those who come with astonishing findings and they give proofs of those to us, that actually helps the supervisors and teachers to rewrite things at times. Together with that, we also have optional papers, electives, which are comparative education, wherein students compare the education system of different countries, the curriculum of different countries. And when they do a comparative analysis of curriculum, they also see how the literatures and languages are being taught in different countries. And they come across various strategies, where various mm, presumptions over with the the languages are being taught to students. They also come across that how the mother tongue is the basic and the first language uh, that they see. The teachers, those who have English background in our education department, they also do researches that improves the language skill, and they do that by exposing the students with vocabulary practice, syntax practice, and stylistic devices usages. Uh, in doing so, they actually not only teach, they also see that how a problem of speech is improved by the teachers. We give text to students and we ask students to express over it, or we ask what do they mean from that. This is also done in the form of flashcards as a tool in teaching languages and literature to the students. The flashcards are basically the devices over which the words are written, and onto the opposite of that is the meaning of that particular word. When meaning, he is given the meaning that actually teacher thought of too. So this way students understand that there is also meaning to a word which is not that they were thinking. We would be talking about the code switching in a time, and we'll see that in class 2. Uh, there is very important aspect of educational pedagogy in English, that is how students' ability is enhanced in interpreting and analyzing the texts given to them. Why? Because it is very difficult for Indian students at times when we go to the grassroots level that the English is taught through Hindi, and even the English word is written in the Hindi language or the native language. That actually hampers the learning of students to learn English, because that is associated with a Hindi word, which if they forget the English word too. As I've already discussed, that there is an interdisciplinary applications also of this integration of languages and literature into education pedagogy, wherein we have already discussed that we explore the complex concepts in science, history, and arts, and many more subjects using languages and literatures. Actually, languages facilitates the cross-disciplinary inquiry and let student articulate connections between student subjects. Uh, like for example, you know, if I teach environmental education, I ask them to uh, fuse that or infuse the environmental components into language. So we try to add environmental components into English in the forms of poems, in the forms of concepts, in the forms of components, and that actually uh, let students understand it. When students, read different subjects, they actually see that how English or any other language can be beneficial to teach that subject. And that is very important when we see the integration of languages and literatures with the other subjects too. In history, the stories that are uh, told or are written, the poems that are shared in uh, Hindi subject, they all integrate the components of one subject with the other. We do researches of identifying that uh, which are the hidden components that are there in the subject too. Together with that, when we are thinking of to do researches by integrating the languages and literatures into education, we are thinking of to develop the 21st century skills. We do researches over these skills incorporation into the students. We ask them to express in spoken or written form. We give them tasks to work in groups, and we ask them to analyze a speech or see the hidden aspects in the texts. We also give some words to them and ask them to write over it. If you see about the language focused activities, there are researchers in education where we try out for activities that are focused on language and the exercises that actually builds the vocabulary of the student in languages. And also there are studies and activities that we perform to develop the oratory skills among the students. One of my students did a research wherein she identified the pronunciational problems among the students speaking English. There are patterns that are to be identified by the researchers, and this identification of pattern is done by the educational pedagogue, but the content part is basically taken up by the person from the language and literatures. So when they come together, they actually lead to a better research that improvises the language education in the country. And also the problem faced by the students can be solved. When we do researches with literature based learnings, we ask them to read novels and plays, and we do discussions. And in doing so, we actually correlate the historical events with the present societal issues. We also compare the societal situations of earlier times with the present times. There is also a threading of understanding of shifting or evolution of a particular event from one time to the other. We give our teacher trainees the reflective journal exercise in training programs. wherein they write about their experience in school in their own way. They are free to write whatever they feel, but we see that and we ask them to underline the lessons or learnings they've taken from the experience. So when we assign reflective journal to them, we ask them to write what they feel and see in the teacher training program in their schools. But when we observe them and guide them to learn from them, we ask them to see for lessons for what they have written. Recently, one of my students shared her uh, journal to me. She wrote, I could have shared the videos to my students so that they could have understood the story better. When she writes that, she learns that together with audio expression or oral communication, there is a need or a requirement of a video presentation too that could not only make them understand the concept better, but also give them interest to see into the classrooms. As I discussed, we also do interdisciplinary projects in PG and in researches too, wherein we ask students to read eco literatures that actually is correlated with the environmental science lessons. We ask them to read the fiction based books that talks about the characters that were there in past that actually worked for or fought for the improvement of the society. One of our student has done a compilation of the women, those who contributed into Indian freedom struggle, delimited to the state Bihar. When we asked the student Ajay to do that, he started with thinking to do for all the uh, women. But later, when he searched into the textbooks and literatures, he hardly could get sufficient names. He was astonished to share, sir, there are many those who are in the discussions of the local people in the state, but they have not been documented into literatures. So I said, let's go for it and do a comparison over the women, those who contributed into the Indian freedom struggle. And she came up with 17 characters, those who were unidentified by the history books, and they are not there. Basically, when we do research, when I said that student come to a class with a knowledge base, we don't teach them, they have their own understanding. That's basically a constructivist approach. They construct their own learnings, and this actually leads to constructing their own theories. These theories emphasize upon the learning, and these theories, when get supported by the s- repeated supports from the languages and literatures and the society, the theories gets strengthened. To do so, we have multi-literacies framework that actually promote the diverse ways of engaging with uh, texts, including visual, digital, and multimedia literacies. Uh, I would like to share one situation. My driver, who was illiterate, have started studying Hindi once he has come in contact with me, cannot read or write, but he can operate mobile. He can see, he can click over the speaker and speak and send a message. He can send audio message, and he can also speak and send the whatever written message to whom he wants to. The idea of multiliteracies framework is that when we are in education pedagogy and we are talking about the languages and literatures, now we don't have to restrict ourselves with languages that are in words. Now we have to also emphasize upon the languages which are in the forms of visuals, which are digital, and which are in symbols or sign form. Because we have students in our class, around 10 students, those who are differently abled. They cannot uh, see the texts, but they can sense texts. When we are coming across the different learners, we are also now seeing into a different way of seeing the literacies, or in a simple term, I can say we are now seeing the different ways to teach. And to teach the languages and literature, the language is changing. They can be symbols, they can be visuals, they can be sense alphabets, as in Braille. Now, Braille is also old. Students that we have, they have instruments that actually uh, transfers the content to them through a recorder, and they can hear it anytime they want. This has actually led to a framework that addresses a new approach to see the languages and literature education in this globalized world. Many of you must have had seen when our honorable prime minister gives his speech in any foreign country, his speech is translated by a translator into the language of that country. Means there is also there is no limitation of speaking in the language which you are knowing. We are also getting softwares that are translating the text or the language or the literature into the language or literature of the student's language. The technology is helping a lot to do so. As we have also uh, discussed that we are now seeing language and literatures as an equipment to let learners learn in different forms. We are critically seeing the languages and literatures pedagogy in a critical way. Uh, there are times when speaker gives blank duration to a classroom. This blank duration to a classroom is basically to think in mind the understandings done. That means there is also a language which is having no word, no sound, no visuals, and no digital text. In languages, we do researches in your own official and non-official talks of students in classrooms, because it is seen that students talk real when teacher turns to the board or is not there in the class, and they don't talk real when the teacher is there in the class or he's talking to them. That means there are multiple forms of communication apart from the spoken, visual, or digital text. What is important in the research of language and literature together with education is to make meaning from the words, visuals, or texts, or even sounds. This making meaning is very important in languages and literatures. What you mean from a particular word or a sound is something that is real, and that is what the teachers are working over it. The teacher trainers are working over it. Uh, this we just touched up in starting that when we do languages and literature researches together with education pedagogy, we do researches on the cultural and linguistic diversity, wherein we acknowledge the students coming from various cultures and linguistic backgrounds. Uh, one sharing I would like to share, one of my professor and we were discussing. Uh, One of our teachers said that uh, I don't speak English as the English people speak. Our professor said, do they speak the Hindi the way you speak? If they can't speak the language you know as better as you can, why do you feel ashamed of not speaking a language which is not yours? In a multicultural setup and a multilinguistic setup, this is a value that we respect the cultural impacts over phonetics, which is a part of language. There are countries wherein some alphabets are not spoken. T, Z, R, H, they're missing. So they don't speak those words, and hence that sound doesn't come. But that doesn't mean that they should be demeaned. In a classroom, we value this multilingualism and we respect the multicultural setup that we are having, because there is far more important things that are to be studied rather than falling prey into technical things of languages. I'm not saying that students may be given an excuse of speaking incorrect English, but if a student is coming from a background wherein a sound of air is automatically coming from the mouth, you cannot stop that in a small span of time. Another area where we work with languages and literature is situated learning, wherein the students given a chance to practice a setup which is not there, but understand the contexts with which that setup is existing. And this adds to the understanding of a culture by the learner. There are situations wherein we put in students to apply a language literature skill so that they can face the diverse social and professional environment. Like I still remember when I was in my school days, I was made the monitor of classroom to see that who speaks Hindi. And the reason was that why I was made the monitor was I was not able to speak English at all. You could understand that I was situated in a situation wherein if I am to check that who is speaking Hindi, I myself should have had controlled myself not to utter a single word in Hindi. That actually made me handicapped in my classroom, and I started trying to speak one or the other word by hearing other friends for one or the other phrase. And slowly and gradually, this made me the way I am today. Hence, situated learnings at times are very good at learning languages and literatures. There are experimentations done wherein the students are kept into the foreign language classrooms and they're asked to speak, and they can speak that because they are situated into that classroom. Another area of the integration of languages and education is basically critically thinking about the uh, powers of dynamics, the ideologies, and the social constructs that are there in the textbooks or the books. Uh, as I said, we have a paper on reading and reflecting on texts. We basically do this. We ask students to see and reflect upon the situations, the conditions, and the reasons for happening and not happening something. We ask them to ask questions and then reinterpret the text in various forms. When we ask students to see or read or see the context into various perspectives, at times they accept that yes, mm, when a text is written or a situation is given, it is good from one perspective and is different in other and from other. Uh, if we go purely to the pedagogical researches in language, we basically check on the digital tools efficacy, wherein we try to see the use of apps, the social media, and the blogs that are given to students to practice language with dynamic contexts. And we see that what are the effects of using these apps over students. And there are researches that are done with single tool, and there are researches that are done with a comparative tool research. Means in for 1 week or say 15 days, one app was used, and another 15 days another app was used, and another 15 days another app was used. And then the effect was seen over the different groups, not in the same group. Uh, Another research and that we are doing is the various ways of integrating the visual aids, the graphics, and the presentations into the oral and written languages. Uh, we are trying to add on the illustrations, we are trying to add on the videos, self-made or transferred videos into the contents, and we are also having um, audio podcasts that are actually for stories for students to hear, and they are prepared on the contents on languages. Uh, to also see that how linguistic diversity affects the languages and literature, we do activities affect study, wherein we do code switching studies, and we do study the dialects that students do have. In code switching, ask student to compare the English sentence to their home language to identify the grammatical patterns. Okay. We also ask student to talk about their home culture, wherein they talk about the experiences they have in their homes, and they are asked to share what different do they do at their homes, and if they have gone to any other's home, what was different there. They are also asked to use the same word or phrase in their own language to fill in the blanks for an unknown English word or phrase. Uh, like for example, if we ask students to fill places with either the words given to them, or we ask to write the word they feel they can. At times, teachers repeat a misunderstood phrase in the little language to reinforce the translation and check for comprehension. We do that deliberately to the students, and students correct it again back and tell them, no, this is not the way this is to be spoken. This means this, and this has to be spoken like
Which pointer?
this.
People have.
if we see the literature education, adaptations of literature in films, graphic novels, and virtual storytelling platforms. Presently, one of our students is doing study on storytelling efficacy, and she's using the English stories as a platform, because storytelling is a method from time immemorial, but the storytelling is changing with the times. It is including the digital aspects into it. It is adding the audio aspects into it. There are also education approaches that are linking the works from history, sociology to the current global issues that actually deepens the understanding of the learner. And we see that how does it affects the cognitive domains of the students, whether they have started thinking in a more constructive way to see the society, or they are more into the criticism of seeing these incidents happening in the society. And if they are criticizing, are they doing it critically, or are they criticizing for the sake of criticizing? This understanding is important for researchers to understand. Together with that, we encourage students to create digital or visual interpretations of literary texts. Uh, if you have had seen uh, books, English books of LKG or UKG, you will agree that there are big pictures and only pictures, and there are hardly 1 or 2 lines per page. Why is that so? Because the students of that level are more interested to see rather than read, because they have not yet read, they are not yet acquainted with the language. They have not understood the alphabets, and they are not good at making the meanings from the word. What they can mean is they can see the rabbit, they can see the tortoise, they can see the tree, they can see the characters, and with that characters they can correlate that what one character is doing, what other character is doing. And in that case, teacher facilitates the relational understanding that is there in the story. And once it has been done, you will realize that child never forgets. And that's the beauty of language and literature being translated or added or integrated together with education pedagogy. This we have already discussed, but there are two apps that actually talk about the storyboard and Adobe Spark to create narratives and combine text and visuals and audios. Uh, the one thing that is very important that we do ask researchers of English language to do and literatures to do in education is to analyze the newspaper, uh, the advertisements there, and see the narratives that are there in the classrooms. Uh, if you will just come across the sentence root of education PhD topics, you will realize that here the idea generation and idea understanding and narratives development is emphasized, and the constructs that are there in the mind of the members of the society and the sample is studied. Uh, Relational studies are also done, wherein the mm, languages impressions in textbooks of language and literature and their effects on the gender, science, and society is also studied. There are researches being done in education that actually studies the uh, poets from one culture to the other culture, but writing in one language, and see that how their writings are similar and different, and what is the way of teaching these poems to the students in different contexts, and also how are these poems shared with the students in different form. uh, Basically, when we do you know integration of languages with education, we want to develop the adaptability of students to communicate in diverse and social and language contexts. And the students have different learning styles, and these learning styles are affected from the different literacies they are facing. Like, for example, I'm an audio learner and I'm having good podcast literature with me, I can learn faster. While there is a student who is a kinesthetic learner, he, if is given podcast, will not learn as fast as a student who is an auditory learner. A kinesthetic learner would definitely need a textbook or a book in his hand so that he can read, he can hold the book in his hand, and he can read word by word and he can understand it. This is we do with students and see that which size of book, which width of book, which size of word do affect students, how designs affects the cognitive domain of the student while studying language and literatures. Uh, Another very important aspect that we have already discussed is uh, developing the critical awareness about the responsibility that a learner is owing for the society, and also to make them a reflective learner who, when once move from one place to the other, can understand the global issues. And this we have discussed. uh, as we discussed, there is also uh, need to do the integration of languages and literatures together with education to see the cross-cultural integration. Uh, Particularly, I will talk about the arts and music. Uh, there has been a big history wherein the stories and dramatics have affected the society to transfer the understandings uh, of the writer to the society, and that has been very important, and that actually plays an interplay of transferring the ethos, the problems to the society. And the music have been a old tool of developing emotions into the learners. In doing so, we are ready for inclusion of teachers from languages and literature together with education pedagogy to have collaborative teaching strategies and collaborative works that actually involves the literature together with the subject specific educator. For example, if I'm from sciences and I want the literature incorporated into science, there can be possibilities. Okay, fine. Uh, if you see for the linguistic researchers, there are researches being done on second language acquisition. There are also researches that are done through first generation learners and second generation learners too. And there are researches that we have already talked on code switching. You know, Uh, there are there are researches on narrative structures and character archetypes and genre studies and different literary appreciation. I hope you all are from English, so you are very good at character archetypes and genre studies. Uh, you are like we are going to get a hero or a heroine or a villain into a literary piece, or we have fictions, we have non-fictions, we have uh, horrors, we have many more such detectives, no, like we have that genre studies. And this is that literary appreciation that we all have to have. And we see that how are these transferred uh, into the society. Mm, there is also another called pattern archetypes, wherein we can guess in a write-up that or a situation that what is going to happen next. So that's basically a stereotype. So when we do such researches, or when we do write such stories, students can guess what is going to happen next. And there are narratives that are existing for long. So interest into such literary piece of work are less. Researchers are trying to develop new areas of narratives that people and students are interested to work on and see on. Uh, in today's world, when we are moving towards the mm, data driven pedagogy, we are having a new area of understanding the language and literature research together with education pedagogy, wherein we see that we have results, we have assessments, we have scores of students, and we actually correlate that with the adjustments students do with the instructions given by the teachers, and students do that with the analysis of a question being done by the teacher. Like for example, there are questions in subjects, say literature or language. There are parts into that question, and we have scores to that part. If a student answers that section, he gets that much of score, and if he doesn't, he cannot. We do an analysis of this also, that which are those portions of assessments in languages or literature wherein students are not able to attain that much. And if there are some mistakes, what are the patterns, or which are those specific places wherein the students are doing mistakes. So now, as we have integrated the technology into the educational pedagogy and language literature research, we are now also doing quantitative research in the education pedagogy related with language and literature subjects. Uh, we are also doing researches with strategies and their efficacy, like novels, poetries that actually affects or addresses the societal issues, and see how the socio-emotional learning is taking place. uh, we have already discussed on that how digital storytelling platforms and interactive ebooks can bridge traditional literature with modern pedagogy. Uh, this I would like to take few minutes more to discuss on is uh, we are shifting from the non-technical era to the technical era, from the teacher-centered society, teacher-centered education to the student-centered education. So the integration of language and literature researches with education pedagogy should think on this line too, that how the diverse learners with diverse learning needs can be supported by such researches. So we need to work on the digital platforms wherein the books are converted in various forms and are given to students in different ways. Um, you have platforms of stories, you have platforms of poems, you have peoples from various subjects that have their own websites. Each one of them are, you know, doing this in their own way. One or two things that needs to be very precisely seen is that any technology integration should be interactive and it has to be user friendly. If these two things are not there, then definitely researchers are not going to reach to that level of uh, effectiveness. Together with that, the another area that is upcoming with the researchers, those who are doing researchers with language and literature and education, is how are they going to integrate the community and global perspectives into their learning? Why this topic or point is important for this discussion and discourse is because we are doing research not only for our own satisfaction, we are also doing so that the findings can be um, justified, exemplified in the nooks and corners of the world. And your findings are going to uh, showcase your country to the other part of the word. So you can also see the contribution of local authors so that they can be brought into a um, you know platform wherein they can showcase their understandings and um, write-ups and uh, literary art that can be showcased with the global perspective too. And when we do that, we basically are developing that multicultural understanding. Another, and I think the last area of integration that is very important is to how integrate the assessment in the integration of language and literature researches with education is assessment. Okay, now assessments are basically done and preferred in education pedagogy in two ways, either in the qualitative form or in the quantitative form. Now the qualitative measures are becoming more prominent and important for assessors to see, because they are saying that the capacity of student to reflect and do a solution to a project is something which is showing their mental exercise that they can do. Together with that, as we have discussed, that when we are working on language proficiency, we are talking about the scores the students are having and how this is affecting the disciplinary performance of the student. So we are also seeing the researches and integration in the quantitative form. As I said that we are shifting to a data-driven pedagogy. So we have data and its analysis, and that analysis can be converted into scores, and scores can actually show that there is improvement in the performance or not. We started from this point that language actually leads to the development or inculcation of empathy, creativity, and global awareness. So this is also something that is to be measured, and any assessment should think of about the assessment of value inculcation done into the subject, or the development of skills the students are having. Uh, Reflections, when we say as a parameter of measurement for assessment, is a general term. The researcher can design his or her own way of letting student reflect in the form. It can be in the form of stories, it can be in the forms of write-ups, it can be in the forms of pictorial presentation, it can be in the forms of drawings, uh, it can be in the form of narrative scene expression. They can do that in different way. If we conclude that when we are thinking of to integrate the language and literature into the education pedagogy, we are actually equipping students with skills that are transferable. We are making them think critically over the issues around them and creatively finding out the solutions to that. And when they do that, they have a deeper appreciation to understand these things through languages and literature. Languages and literature basically let students know the world and understand the history, philosophy, geography, science of the world. And this is what the integration should see for and come up with new findings. When we, increase the language and literature researchers as educational tools, we can create a learning environment where the students are more uh, learning, they are reading with the emotions and ethos and cultural aspects of their friends around, and they are also appreciating the things around them. And that is something that we all need to see. Uh, that was all from my side. I hope I have uh, started my discussion with uh, sharing that how we are doing researches in English language and literature. Hope this can help the persons working in English in different ways to see and collaborate with us. Thank you to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to share my understandings. Over to
Thank you,
you, ma'am.
sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You can, any questions you can ask, sir, or you can post your questions. If there are no questions, we let.
This is Uma Pungudi. Am I audible to you,
Yes,
Pungudi?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I
Yes,
first
ma'am.
thank Dr. Professor Gaurav Rao for your comprehensive talk, sir. Wherein you did not stop by just describing the concepts, you went on to provide context to understand it in a better way. Thank you for that, sir. And as you concluded that as teachers, researchers, we should work on different aspects based on the basics that description you have given. And as I was listening to you, it came to my mind that when we evaluate, assess the essays or writing outputs given by students, we can include in the rubrics along with the accuracy and the coherence testing. We could also tell them that you are a critical thinker and that you have a perspective and you know how to persuade. Might help us to achieve all the ends that you were talking about, the role of language in two different disciplines. And that can be added along with the rubrics. That is my observation as I kept on listening to you. Hope I am correct, sir.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
And let not that rubrics stop. है ना? Keep adding, and it's really depending upon the topic that you're taking up.
Yes.
You might have one aspect in one topic, another one you can have another one.
Yes. All your subtitles can be converted into rubrics, sir, as I just listened to your
Yes.
essay.
Okay.
You were taking cultural and historical awareness. I could tell a student
Yeah.
that you have a cultural awareness from your essay. I could tell that you have historical awareness. All your subtitles can be converted into rubrics, sir. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the thought-provoking session. Your insights have clearly highlighted the important role that language and literature play in designing the mind, engaging critical and creative thinking, building cultural and historical awareness, and enhancing educational pedagogy. The multidisciplinary approach you have outlined not only bridges theoretical knowledge and practical application, but also open up new avenues for innovative teaching and impactful research. And your expertise in this domain has undoubtedly inspired us to think beyond conventional methods and explore integrative strategies to enhance both our pedagogy and scholarly pursuits. And we are especially grateful for the clarity and depth with which you presented complex ideas, making the session both intellectually stimulating and deeply engaging. And today it is our privilege to listen to you and to learn from you today, discussing various methods, approaches, and the role of language and literature in uh, teaching people, students, instilling creative thinking. And thank you for the session, sir. Thank you for the enlightening session. And you were so clear with real life examples, and you have given the tools for how to assess also. And you didn't stop with the methods alone. And I also thank all the participants for their enthusiastic involvement and active engagement during the session. And I request all the participants to be there for the next session at 2 p.m. today. Thank you, sir. I thank you and all the participants for being here and sharing your insights with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.